Hello, class 8 students. How are you all? So I hope all of you are absolutely fine. Now, what is Prerna ma'am going to teach you today? Today, from your textbooks, we are going to be reading chapter number 4, which is on page number 35. So come on, all of you quickly open your textbooks. All right, so here we are on page number 35, chapter number 4. And what is the name of the chapter? The name of the chapter is Expansion of British Rule in North India. Now, if you remember in the previous chapters, in chapter 2 and 3, we basically studied that how and why British wanted to conquer India and with whom all was British fighting for supremacy. Correct? And in the previous chapter, we read something about the southwest regions that the British were trying to conquer, in which they were successful to a large extent. Now, because we know what was the purpose of British trying to control the entire India, they were looking forward to actually take control over the other parts of India. So now they move towards North India, where of course they did face a few challenges. They were defeated in some of them, they won a few of them, but gradually they were able to take over the North India or the northern part of the country as well. So in this chapter, in chapter number 4, which is on page number 35, we are going to be studying 4 main topics. What are these 4 main topics? So the first is Anglo-Sikh War. So like we studied Anglo-Mysore and Anglo-Maratha wars in the previous chapter, that is war between the British and the Marathas, and British and with some other parts of India. Here we are going to talk about wars between British and the Sikh community or the dynasty. Second, we are going to talk about expansion of British power under Dalhousie. So Lord Dalhousie was one of he's a very known general of the British government. So how Lord Dalhousie made plans, or what were the policies that he brought in so that the British rule could be established in India. The third topic that we are going to study about is doctrine of lapse, which is again one of the policies that was introduced by the British to gain control over India, and annexation of Africa. All right. So these are the 4 main topics that we are going to study in this chapter. So let us start knowing this story about British trying to control or trying to capture North India. Here we go. Under Maharaja Ranjit Singh's rule, Punjab remained a formidable kingdom capable of checking the British expansion in India. So this Punjab region, it was ruled by Maharaja Ranjit Singh, and he was a very strong leader. He was a very strong ruler. So because he was very strong in terms of his army, in terms of his administration, the empire was formidable, kind of an area which was very difficult for the British to conquer. A succession of short-lived Sikh rulers, strained a relation between the Sikh court and the Sikh army and the treasury by some Sikh generals resulted in Punjab being annexed by the British. So basically what happened after the demise of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, the Punjab kingdom, it was ruled by the rulers who were taking care of this region. They were not as strong as Maharaja Ranjit Singh. Plus, there were some disputes between the ruler, between the army. So within the court or within the entire kind of government, you can say, there were a lot of disputes going on. And like we have studied in the previous chapters also, that how British, they were expert in this practice of divide and rule. They applied the same here, and they were gradually able to take over Punjab as well, and then gradually spreading to the other parts of North India. Now, what happened next? So we first talk about the first Anglo-Sikh War. After the death of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, his 3 sons ruled for short periods, one after the other. It is believed that they were killed in the intra-family power struggle. So there was dispute within the family, within. Okay, so within the family, there was so much of dispute that the 3 brothers, they fought amongst themselves and they were killed. In the absence of a powerful ruler, the Sikh army generals had become ambitious and they were not willing to bow to the command of the regent. Right? The prevailing chaos in Punjab provided the British an opportunity to try to extend their control over the Sikh kingdom, something that I just told you. Fearing a British attack, the Sikh army crossed the Satluj River and entered the British territory in December 1845. So basically, the Sikh army, they thought that before the British try to attack us, let us attack them before. Responding to the Sikh incursion, Governor General Lord Hardinge, he declared a war on Punjab. Thus began the Anglo-Sikh War, the first Anglo-Sikh War. Now, in the initial phase of the war, what happened? The Sikh army, it scored victories over the British forces. However, due to treachery of some of their generals, that is a few people who tried to conspire against their own people, the British forces defeated the Sikhs and they occupied Lahore. So again, following the policy of divide and rule and using disunity to their advantage, the British were able to defeat the Sikh rulers as well. Now, after this first Anglo-Sikh war happened, what were the consequences of it? What were the results? Let's study that. So coming back to your textbook, let's see what were the results. So the Sikh Darbar at Lahore was required to pay a war indemnity of rupees 1.5 crore. Instead, it ceded to the British the territories between the Bias and the Indus rivers and Kashmir and the fertile Jalandhar Doab. Okay, so basically they had to pay a huge amount and also give a few territories. Then Dalip Singh remained the ruler and Maharani Jindan Kaur the regent. Basically, she was taking care of the kingdom. Later on, through the Treaty of Bharawal, Jindan Kaur was deposed as the regent, that is, she was removed from that position and banished to Sheikhupura jail near Lahore. A British resident was appointed in the Sikh Darbar. Why this was done? Again, to keep a check on the Sikh ruler. The Sikh army was reduced to a nominal force and a British force was posted at Lahore. And under the Treaty of Amritsar, which was signed in 1845, the Dogra ruler of Jammu, Gulab Singh, purchased Kashmir from the British for a payment of rupees 75 lakh. So this was the result of the first Anglo-Sikh war. Now, again, because the Sikh rulers were not really happy about this, they were discontented, came the second Anglo-Sikh war. What happened in this war? Let's see that. So the second Anglo-Sikh war, it was fought between 1848 to 1849. The seeds of the second Anglo-Sikh war were sown by the refusal of the Hindu Governor General of Multan, Diwan Mulraj, to pay the increased revenue demanded by the British controller Sikh Darbar. So this person, Diwan Mulraj, he said that I'm not going to pay the unnecessary increase in taxes, this revenue, I'm not going to pay. And this led to a war between British and the Sikh. The British decided to replace Mulraj with a Sikh governor. And in April 1848, when the two British officers went to take possession of the Multan fort from Mulraj, they were killed by a rebellious mob. Now, when this happened, when this war happened, there were other consequences as well. What were these? So, this is about the second Anglo-Sikh war. Now, what were the results? The British, now in this, they scored decisive victory over the Sikhs in the second Anglo-Sikh war. They annexed Punjab, which subsequently was renamed as Northwest Frontier Province, NWFP. Probably, maybe you've studied about this or you will study more about this in your higher classes. The 11-year-old Sikh Maharaja Dalip Singh was dethroned and awarded a pension. 5 years later, he was sent to England, where he was put under the protection of Queen Victoria. To check any future rebellion, the Sikh regiments were placed under the command of British officers. So basically, how British again were able to take control of the Northwest Frontier Province as well by defeating the strong and also, of course, some of the weak Sikh rulers. Now we talk about Lord Dalhousie, how Lord Dalhousie, under his governorship, how British was able to expand its control over India. All right. So after the annexation of Punjab, the last independent kingdom, Lord Dalhousie. So Punjab was the last independent kingdom. Lord Dalhousie, what should he do? He embarked on further expansion of British territories. Now his eyes were on the subordinate states, which were under the British influence, but not really ruled by them. They were not directly ruled by them. To bring these states under the direct rule of the British, what did Lord Dalhousie do? He used two instruments, two policies he brought. First was doctrine of lapse, and the second instrument was the annexation of Awadh. All right. So now first let's talk about what exactly was this doctrine of lapse. So the British annexed the land where ruler died, even his legal heir was present. So let's say a ruler died, his son is still there. What did the British do? They still occupied that region. They annexed their land gradually, annexed the following. They also captured these states, which were Satara, Nagpur, and Jhansi. However, the British had to face some resistance by the Indians. It's quite obvious that the son of the ruler who was passed away, he's alive, but the British said that we are still going to capture this area. Okay. So doctrine of lapse was something that they were not happy with. All right. And then, of course, so we also talked about that also applied this doctrine of lapse. It also applied to deprive the relatives or adopted sons of the earlier sanctioned pensions and titles. Among those whose pensions were taken away were the relatives of Karnataka Nawab and Nana Sahib, who was the adopted son of Peshwa Baji Rao. So basically, the idea was just to remove all the Indian rulers. All right. Then what happened? So now we talk about annexation of Awadh. So Lord Dalhousie used the instrument of misgovernance. So he said that Awadh region is not properly administered. That is, the rules and regulations are not properly made. Even if the rules and regulations which are properly made, they are not implemented or they are not executed properly. So there's a lot of misgovernance, and it is becoming for the British to it is becoming difficult for the British to rule, and it is also difficult for the Indian ruler. So he said that for proper administration, for proper governance, it is important that we, the British, actually take this region under our control. So he said that misgovernance is the reason for which Awadh needs to be brought under the control of the British. So use the instrument of misgovernance to annex Awadh, which was a subsidiary state of the British. Actually, the Nawabs of the Awadh, by accepting the subsidiary alliance with the British, began to neglect their administration because they enjoyed the British protection against external invasions and eternal rebellions. However, gradually, Awadh, once called the Garden Granary of and Queen Province of India, reached a state of bankruptcy. That is, the financial or the finances of the entire region of Awadh, of the kingdom of Awadh, had drained out. There was no money left. Apart from the lax administration of the Nawabs, that is the careless administration of the Nawabs, what had happened? The British also improvised Awadh by charging, impoverished Awadh by charging huge money for the maintenance of their army stationed in Awadh. So what was the reason that the money from the Awadh kingdom was drained out? It was the policies of the British only. Eventually, Dalhousie deposed the Awadh Nawab, that is, he removed him, who was the Nawab at that time, Wajid Ali Shah, and annexed the state in 1856. Now, if you look at this map, it says British expansion in India under Lord Dalhousie. All right. So there's a small box which is given in your textbook. It talks about Lord Dalhousie, wrong policies or right policies. So you can read this and understand what exactly is given about Lord Dalhousie. All right. So basically, what the British was trying to do is that they were trying to capture the entire north region or the northwestern region by putting up their own people. So like just we read the case of Awadh, wherein what did they do? They saw that, there was a policy that was made that we know that Awadh was gradually annexed. So what did the British say? They said that because now the ruler of Awadh has to accept the terms and conditions that we, the British, are going to lay. And one of the kind of terms and conditions were, first, that the ruler needs to not really have his own army. Rather, British troops will also be stationed at the conquered or the annexed area. And who is going to pay for these troops? It is the ruler of that particular area. So the ruler of that particular area, in the name of protection of his kingdom, is paying an outsider. And gradually the financial resources were drained, and the British, they took advantage of this lax and they annexed it on the grounds of misgovernance. Okay, fine. So let's just see something about Lord Dalhousie. What exactly your textbook says. So the real name of Governor General Lord Dalhousie was James Andrew Brown Ramsay. He is praised for consolidating the British rule in India and laying the foundation of an Indian administrative setup modeled on the British government. However, so this they're talking about the positive aspect, what was considered as good about Lord Dalhousie in terms of the policies that he brought. However, some critics blame Lord Dalhousie for pushing the East India Company into a financial mess by his wrong policies. He is also criticized for his failure to notice the brewing resentment among the Indian masses that led to the revolt of 1857, about which we are going to study in the coming up chapters. So basically, the critics say that we were able, the critics say that, some part of the British government was able to suppress the masses. But because Lord Dalhousie started getting in so many policies that mainly hampered the financial part or the financial aspect of the country, people started showing a lot of resentment, and this resentment gradually led to the first War of Independence, which was the revolt of 1857. Now, looking at Lord Dalhousie's tenures, we come across a number of administrative and developmental steps initiated by him. Notable were the creation of Department of Public Works. So like you have PWD, Public Works Department, which is responsible for certain infrastructure or construction activities. So this concept of PWD, who brought in to India? Lord Dalhousie. Then opening of engineering colleges, again, so in a way, higher education is promoted. Introduction of railways, improving modes of communication, and establishing of telegraph and postal systems. So improving or setting and then improving of the modes of transport and communication, and creating a huge irrigation facilities and buildings of bridges and metal roads. Very important that earlier India did not have the concept of metal roads. What is the advantage of metal roads? Metal roads are also called as all weather roads because they do not wear out in any season. Particularly, we see that during the rainy season, what happens? The roads, they are in a very messy condition. But these metal roads are all weather roads, and they are not hampered even in the rainy season. So it says snowfall in the famous hill resort Dalhousie in the Chamba Valley of Himachal Pradesh. The hill resort, named after Lord Dalhousie, was built in 1854 during his tenure as Governor General. So when it comes to Lord Dalhousie, there's a mix of opinions, correct? But yes, some policies that he brought about or the changes that he brought about were really good. But at the end of the day, what was the true intention? The true intention was to suppress the Indians and rule over them, which obviously was not a good one. Okay, so I hope all of you liked the story about the British trying to conquer the northern part of India. What are we going to do now? We're going to read the chapter again, watch the video, and try to first solve all the questions given at the end of the chapter on our own. I will see you all in the next class. Till then, bye-bye, my dear students.